Good morning from Easier Habits Live. I'm Alec, and I hope you had a good Easter weekend. We did not film yesterday or Good Friday because our kids were home, and we just needed things to be a little bit simpler and easier with the hyperactive fighting kids. But it's good to be back, and since this is Tuesday, that does mean Meg has a live stream with folks in Japan. So I'm using this time to just talk about tips that can help you in your business. And one of the subjects I've been interested in most recently is ChatGPT and how it can streamline a lot of processes. So there's a lot of processes like market research I talked about before, where the market research process can be greatly sped up by the fact that ChatGPT can compress certain things. So, for instance, you can ask it to look for influencers in this niche that do this thing. And rather than doing 2 or 3 separate searches yourself to correlate and find the right people, it can give you a first pass. Does that mean it's going to have everybody? No. And sometimes it does make up data, so you have to double check stuff yourself. But even so, not having to do being able to take what would have been for 10 influencers 30 different searches, 20 or 30 different searches to cross-reference and find the right people. And because you're narrowing down the list, actually, you'd probably have to check, 30, 40 influencers to find the ones who meet those conditions. Having them right off the bat, even if you have to double check that list, right, means you just do whatever. If you have that list of 20 influencers, that's 20 checks rather than, having to go through twice as many people and 2 or 3 searches for each one, right? 120 checks. So that was an example of how ChatGPT can streamline just searching for information. But the other thing I found really useful with ChatGPT, especially in processes that are well documented or have a lot of documentation on the net, is learning through ChatGPT. So just an example of this, as a technical consultant, I ran into a system I was less familiar with. And not only could I ask ChatGPT to give me a step-by-step process for running that, like installing and running that technical system, which was nice, I was kind of more curious about, all right, what is this thing actually doing under the hood? Because a lot of technical jargon is used to say in general what the thing does, but if you want to actually see what a technical product or bit of code does, you either have to go deep into the docs or even sometimes read the code itself to see what are you actually doing on this step. Whereas with ChatGPT, I could literally ask it, all right, what does this product do during step X? And that was something that, I would have had to go to the website, find their docs, find a particular doc dealing with that step, see if that that documentation was sufficient, and if not, try and then hunt down the code itself to see what it's doing. And so I think this is one of the things that ChatGPT will revolutionize productivity in, is just basically compressing a lot of steps. A lot of people are really bad in terms of just static websites with tons of information about actually answering the question you want answered. But being able to talk to an AI that has read the entire website and many websites and can compress all that information into a coherent response to a natural language question is like having a private tutor. And of course, the caveat here is ChatGPT does sometimes make stuff up. But even so, even if it's 80% accurate, if you have a mental model that's in the right ballpark, you then know what to validate. You know better questions to ask. You know better terminology for the product or concept that you're researching. And so that is like it just helps you jumping to an 80% accurate mental model is actually much faster than creating that mental model from scratch via multiple searches and digging through lots of extraneous information, because essentially even even if you're creating the mental model yourself, right, you might be off anyway. You might have an inaccurate view. And so actually I see that even if there are still some accuracy questions, that that would be true of your own understanding. If you're brand new to a space, you probably have some misconceptions. And so at least with ChatGPT, you're skipping a few steps. Now again, the more mission critical this information is, the more it's based on either highly recent data that maybe ChatGPT doesn't have access to, or very old data that was not widely published on the web. So just for fun, I had ChatGPT look for bulletin board system info. And there is information like that posted here and there on the web, but maybe not the stuff that ChatGPT was trained on. And so that was one area where I could tell it was making stuff up. So there are areas where this works better, which it would be stuff that's not the last year or two, but also since, say, like the 2000s would be like great information on that. But even that, with the recency stuff, I was able to find for like large and popular frameworks some pretty accurate recent information on ChatGPT. So that is an example of using your search. Now, how do you use this as an entrepreneur? There's all sorts of things, right? How to do your own taxes, how to set up a company, how to set a company in a particular state. And that's not to say that you shouldn't get an accountant, that you shouldn't consult a lawyer or use other services, but it can give you a jump start so you understand the process better. And so when you're talking to an accountant or a lawyer, for example, you have an idea of what the process is. You can confirm that with them. You can ask questions, etc. So that's an example of just like the technical side of things. And as well as what I was using it for, actually. If you're an entrepreneur, you need a website, you need technical expertise. If that's not your area of your personal skill set, then actually going to ChatGPT and asking, how do I do X? Tell me about how that works. And forming a high level, like diving into one of the steps. Tell me more about step 4. I'm lost on step 4. I'm getting this error. I haven't actually tried that, but that would be an interesting one to test ChatGPT on. That might help you get up to speed where you might have spent an afternoon or a day or several days dealing with some annoying technical problem. So it kind of jumpstart you to understanding a lot of areas that might not be your area of expertise as a budding entrepreneur, solopreneur, consultant, whatever. So I hope this is helpful. You absolutely should check out ChatGPT and maybe keep an eye out for it in the news. AI is going to pretty radically change how we work. And now it's just the baby steps, and people are kind of, it's popular and people are saying, I did this or whatever, and they're just kind of playing around with it. It seems really fun, but the people who are going to outperform in the market, out-execute, who are going to be able to, as a solopreneur, execute research really quickly and find their target audience faster, which, if you're doing it by the guess and check method personally, can take months, right? But if you can skip some of those steps or accelerate some of those steps with ChatGPT, right, you have a huge advantage being able to create a content media plan of quality media, right? But you leveraging ChatGPT maybe for first drafts, that's an example, right? Learning faster so you're not stuck on a particular step. All of these things will become a huge advantage for people who are diving in early and more familiar with it. eventually I really do think that everyone will be using it in some form or fashion. Maybe the people who aren't going directly to ChatGPT will be using other software and services that basically repackage ChatGPT, which is already happening quite a bit. And so this will get everywhere, but one of the big advantages that you can have now is being ahead of the curve in learning what problems it's good for solving, how to ask questions, how to verify, how to get the most leverage. So there are some, it is not just magic. You don't just make a wish, right? There's some skill in finding the right prompt for ChatGPT, or a series of prompts to train it to do what you want. And so developing that skill earlier will help you stay ahead of the curve as a lot of things change for the future. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And of course, until next time, make big changes, one small habit at a time.